Hello, I'd like to tell you about the development of the Clinical Functional Impairment Scale. And before I begin, I wanted to just acknowledge the work of my colleagues Mary Ellen Wright, who's a nurse researcher here at Mission, and Sherry Danslow, a statistician. And also to thank the many developmental pediatricians and others who participated in the research by responding to the survey. So in this era of value-based care, the measurement of outcomes is critical. And in 2009, the Society for Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics surveyed its members regarding the extent to which they were measuring processes and outcomes of care. And although everybody agreed that it was really an important thing to do, it was clear that the majority are not systematically measuring outcomes of care. The major barrier to systematic outcome measurement is lack of a simple, efficient, and flexible measure of function. And in the absence of such a measure, most of us in the clinic just rely on getting updates from parents and caregivers about a child's symptoms and the extent to which those symptoms and areas of impairment are improving. So this paper describes some of our efforts to develop the Clinical Functional Impairment Scale. The CFIS has some similarities to the Clinical Global Impression Scale, a widely used instrument in child psychiatry. It has some similarities and also some important differences. It is specific rather than global, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. It also relies on a process of shared decision-making. So during the course of a typical clinic visit, the clinician and the caregiver can identify one or more functional impairments that are priorities for treatment. The 20 functional impairments that are presented in the CFIS cover the range of clinical problems that arise in our clinics in DBPs. So there are functional impairments that relate to internalizing problems such as inattention, social or peer problems, anxiety and depressed mood, and sleep problems. There are externalizing functional impairments like irritability, hyperactivity, impulsivity, oppositional defiant behavior, aggression, self-injurious behavior. There are functional impairments that are related in some ways to autism, such as repetitive behaviors, resistance to change. There are learning and other developmental areas of function, such as learning problems, cognitive impairment, adaptive skills impairment, communication impairment, and so on. So there's a total of 20 functional impairments that are covered in the Clinical Functional Impairment Scale. And for each, the clinician rates the severity on a 1 through 5 Likert scale, and then on follow-up, the clinician again rates the severity and also the interval change on a 7-point scale. Now, it's important to note that these areas of functional impairment are not diagnoses, so that children with the same diagnosis may present with very different functional impairments, and conversely, that children with different diagnoses may have functional impairments in common. The process of specifying the areas of functional impairment and prioritizing them for treatment helps the clinician and the parent to establish goals for treatment, as well as providing a mechanism for determining the effectiveness of treatment. So the methods of the work that we did included a chart review to establish the list of functional impairments that I mentioned, and then piloting the CFIS in our clinics and making revisions. We then established content validity. We had focus groups involving 12 DBPEDS clinicians, and we did qualitative analysis and further instrument revision based on those focus groups. We then embarked on a study of inter-rater reliability, and this was done through a survey. We presented complex cases in vignettes that were presented on the SDBP discussion board, and a convenience sample of 94 clinicians responded to the survey. They rated the severity and the interval change on those functional impairments based on the information that was provided in the case vignettes. The results from those focus groups showed that the instrument was very flexible, was easy to use, and supported this kind of clinical approach that was very focused on function and was not entirely diagnosis-driven. On the inter-rater reliability study, we saw a spread of responses generally supporting moderate inter-rater agreement. So in summary, the CFIS is an innovative clinical measure. It's designed for DB-PEDS clinics. It covers the range of developmental and behavioral disorders that typically present in our clinics. The emphasis is on function, and in that way it's consistent with the World Health Organization, ICF, the International Classification of Function. Future work that we have includes studying the process of shared decision-making in the use of the CFIS and doing some additional studies of inter-rater reliability with real patients. We will examine the agreement on severity and interval change among the clinician and observers, and also look at agreement between clinicians and caregivers. Our goal is to build the CFIS into electronic health records and to make it freely available for others to do the same. And so in this way, we hope to provide clinicians with a practical, efficient, and validated system of measuring functional impairments. Thank you.